And welcome back. Good afternoon. We are day 2, afternoon sessions, final 3 sessions for Event Tech Live in the hybrid version on Thursday today, aren't we? Sorry for losing my track of my days. We are here. We are true event professionals on the stage next. So I'd like to say that we're just waiting for one more person who's just arrived. Unfortunately, due to the situation, we have had to have a last-minute replacement, but he's here and we're ready to go. So if you are here in person and you're using the headsets, if you could leave them in the black box on your way out, just so we can make sure they're all sanitized properly. And also, please do share your questions. So we've got a QR code that you can use, or if you go to glisser.live/ETL21 and put your questions to our panel. So our panel today, we have Nick from Linked Technologies, Duncan from Reset Connect, and James from Clarion. Hi, James.
Nice to meet you.
How are you having good events so far?
Very good, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. And what I'll do is I'll let you introduce yourselves, tell us where you're from. But probably, I love the question, how many years have you been in the industry? It was a very impressive panel from the Women in Exhibitions panel yesterday. It was, I think, collectively a long time. So, yeah, kick us off,
So that's
Nick.
the starter for 10.
Yeah, starter for 10.
Okay, I started in 1996, just after the Euros.
Nice.
The country was rocking, Oasis were smashing it. Everything seemed to be coming out of the doldrums. And then I started working at Reed Exhibitions on I think a primary healthcare show, which was good. And yeah, I've since worked with a number of other organisers, including Penton, who were the closest stills sort of management team have gone on to build. Run about 50-odd marketing technology conferences, and then jumped over the fence to the tech suppliers and worked with Coconex to build the interactive floor plan for sales. And then have worked with a few other tech companies, and now finally have launched Linked Technologies. So that's why I'm here today.
And what do Linked Technologies do?
We basically provide platforms for virtual events and for communications for corporates and event organisers.
Okay, fab. Duncan, what about you?
I started also just after the Euros in 1996. I started originally at Blenheim, who had just been bought by a company called Miller Freeman in Chiswick. I worked there on a video game show. Then I started looking after Confex for a few years, so I got to know this sector quite well. And then went to Clarion, and that's where I've known James for the last 10 or so years. And then went and lived in New York for a couple of years. Thanks very much, Clarion. That's very nice. And then pandemic hit, kind of event stopped. I started thinking about what I wanted to do and what sector I wanted to work in going forwards. And I think you can see with the interest that you've had with COP going on this week, I thought sustainability and kind of thinking about the environment would be a good sector to work in. And we've kind of spent the last, 8-9 months running virtual events, digital events, and then we've got a big show next year at XL as part of London Climate Action Week.
All right. And you guys were on a session on Monday, weren't you, on the virtual Event Tech Live, talking about sustainability, and you had some great stats, Duncan.
That's right. I'm the bookends of the whole show, right at the very beginning, right at the very end. So
yeah.
The bit in the middle was good fun. I hope this bit is as well.
And James, what about you?
Yeah, not 1996, 2006 for me. So these guys have been there a little bit longer. But
You're a newbie then.
I'm a newbie, yes, just the 15 years or so. It's very sticky, isn't it, events? Once you trip and fall into it, and then you just stick there for as long as you can. But yeah, I started off at UBM. I was working in sort of publishing and media to start with, transitioned into events where I was working in real estate and architecture and design in that portfolio that they had over there. Moved over into Informa, telecoms and media, ran some big trade shows in telecoms for a couple of years, and then joined Clarion in 2014. I think it's actually interesting. I think was it 2010, 11? No, 2012. We in UBM when we started running the first virtual events. And do you remember how they went? That was.
I'm in, and if I look, it's good to see so many of the companies still here today as well. No, I think if you look at where the industry's come along, I mean, it's completely changed. And I think, were it not for the pandemic, it'd be very interesting to see if how long it would have taken for a lot of these, for the events industry to move over into virtual. And I think it really has. It's sped up that transition. I think we've had video calling for 20 years, And it's really only when we all get locked up in our house that suddenly Zoom becomes a thing. And I don't think the events industry will ever go back to how it used to be. And that was one of the things I talked about in my session at the beginning of the week.
Yeah, so that's a nice little segue into what I'm doing for Clarion now. I run our enterprise tech division and I run digital transformation events. So yeah, the stats are that we've traveled 5 years in 12 months in terms of the accelerated digital transformation. And I run the biggest unified communications event in Europe as well, which is all about how do you adopt things like Zoom technology in Teams, and how does team collaboration work? How do you solve the hybrid headache is the conversation. So it's interesting to be seeing how that is being delivered in lots of different industries, and then actually what we're doing within events as well. It's all tied together quite nicely.
And I know this isn't my session, but I do have another question, because I find it really interesting with what you're doing at Clarion, because you've turned your approach totally as a company on its head, and you're letting the customer lead, aren't you? I know that Adam Ford is talking about that at UFI this week, and that customer-led approach, people have sort of alluded to it, but for a major trade show organizer with a long history, that's a massive move.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a big cultural change. I think over the last couple of years, a whole piece on customer centricity, but also that's got to be underpinned by data and the technology that you use. So yeah, absolutely. It's interesting actually, even the metrics that we are measured by, it's not a monthly financials meeting anymore. It's one month is a financials meeting, the next month is about the customer and what are the customer needs and requirements. So I think it's only a good thing. I think that, I mean, I could speak quite candidly, the portfolio that I took over was absolutely not customer focused in 2018, and it was seeing a decline in the footfall for probably about 15% for a couple of years. And we've just come back with a show that we delivered in October where people have said that's the best show that's ever happened. And it was all because of the fact that we listened to what the customer wanted, and the customer being the visitor, not the customer being the sponsor. So yeah, that's definitely a change in the way that we're operating within our core business. And I think it's interesting how that creates other opportunities as well to build communities or to build other services and products. I think, Duncan, you're probably seeing this with the research that you're doing on your new launch at the moment as well, right?
Yeah, and I think, I think trade shows historically have often claimed to, be about communities. I think that's almost the kind of part of the lie that's been sold to some customers at various points. I mean, I remember years ago on the video game show, sort of 99 or 2000, and this show was growing, double-digit growth every year, and I think we got it up to, I mean, it was running at a 66% margin. For a trade show, that's a big number, and we were just basically taking money off the exhibitors and not really thinking about what they wanted and delivering on their needs and so on. And I remember I actually went to Confex. So I was working on this video game show, went to Confex, and I saw more exhibitors walking around at Confex. I'm like, what are you guys doing here? And it's like, we've had enough of you, taking our money and not delivering what we want. We're going to run our own events now. They started taking their clients off to Barbados and things like that, which is...
Yeah, the tech companies have done a fantastic job of that, right? And they don't see it as, it is not a profit centre for them. It's their marketing budget. So if they want to spend £20 million on running Cisco Live and they don't make a bean from it, they don't care. So guess what? The quality and execution and what they do and all the stuff that they do for community and customer is the benchmark. And so you can't just be, you're not competing against traditional conferences and trade shows. There's now a whole set of non-traditional competitors, and clearly that is going to go into what we do in the virtual world, right? So you can see already what Zoom and others are doing, the platforms that they're building. You've got all the live streaming. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting how that all shakes out over the course of the next 12 to 18 months and what the future looks like for, I think we've talked about that hype circle. So I know that you said that events are never going to come back in the same way, and I agree, but I just think that it'll be interesting to see where it settles next year. So we've gone through that peak and trough.
Absolutely.
Period.
And I think if you're only running a show every 12 months or every 2 years or every 6 months, our exhibitors want to speak to their customers, or our customers want to speak to their customers much more frequently. And I think what that blend looks like of those touch points, whether it's us doing, one of the things, again, as a startup, if your customer asks you to do something, which is where we are, you kind of, you do it as much as you can, or that's because you need the customers. So I think, trying out workshops or trying webinars or, running small bespoke meetings for 3 or 4 key customers are things that we're trying out. I think a big trade show organizer may not have done that. So we've been lucky that we've been able to be quite agile. And I just think, I mean, maybe Nick as well, you want to say, I think that year-round community piece, and it's not, what that model looks like, whether it's a subscription-based model, whether it's a small touch points, every few months. I think a lot of the events, the trade shows in this sector need to kind of work out, and it's good to see your show so busy. What that future looks like, I'm not sure. And then I think if you then start looking at the other types of events, if I am for a lot of big brands out there, particularly on your internal events, are you going to be flying everyone to I don't know, Singapore or, Hague or Amsterdam or whatever it is to run your big internal meeting? I'm not sure you will going forward.
No.
I think you're going to look at that blend of technology and try and work out, how you interact with your audience over multiple geographies. So I think there's, not just, we're talking a bit about trade shows, but I think everything, whether it's the conference sector, the meeting sector, the internal event sector.
Yeah. I'll let you jump in a minute, Nick, as well. Or,
Thank
do you want to go now?
Yeah, I think one of the key things, everyone talks about virtual events, now hybrid events. Really, what we're really looking at trying to do...
I need to go a bit closer.
Hear me now?
Hear me now.
So what we really need to try and do is to make actually the event brand live and breathe for the whole year round. It's not a case of just putting on a virtual event and a live event at the same time. As Duncan says, it's about keeping those communities alive, because essentially the event brand itself has the community, and what we need to do is actually allow our customers to gain access to that in many different ways. And it's not just going to be by taking the live event and recording it and streaming it out. We have to come up with new ways that are actually going to make that engagement more meaningful.
Yeah, it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach, is it? I think that it is going to depend upon what sector you're in and sort of what level of digital proficiency people have got, and also whether it is a show about learning or whether it's about procurement. The different type of community that you build and the interactions that you've got have got to be curated for that sector.
Well, completely. I mean, every industry is different, and the average ticket price for a sale in any given industry is going to be different. So you need to provide different types of interaction to make that valuable. So that means that the virtual model has to be very flexible, like you say.
Do you think there's an age thing here as well? I'll go to both of you on this. Do you think, I think every single year that I've been going to trade shows, UFI or someone the AEO have done some results on it. Every single year you go to a trade show, the audience is 1 year older as well. And I just wonder if tech is a way of getting a new audience engaged with our audience.
The trade show is just a vehicle for marketing your products and services. And effectively, if that's the most effective vehicle, it may be that the person that's actually signing the check and you're selling to is 55 years old, but actually if we give them tools to actually make it work for them, then they will have someone else in their organization using those tools. So I think tech shouldn't be seen as being a barrier, but actually it's their route to success, and then as organizers and also as tech suppliers, we have to then give them, sort of show them the way to how to use the technology most effectively.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a piece about accessibility there, particularly with travelling, like you talked about a minute ago. I think that there was a stat at the UFI conference this morning the question, is this the end of big international events, and are we now going to see more regional, continental events or domestic events? Too early to say, probably, but it's a good headline, isn't it? That one.
What was the kind of overall?
I think that was just one of those sessions that they were running, and they didn't actually publish the answer to that yet. So I'll have a look on LinkedIn later.
Ask in 10 years.
Yeah. But no, I do think that younger generations are probably going to be more adapting. And again, if you have a look at the markets that you work in, even the subsets of the audiences that you've got. I mean, I work in tech, and I've got some more traditional tech roles and leadership roles, but there's also developers, for example, who are, so you can become a really professional developer 2 years out of university. And so the way that I might build the hybrid solution for a developer audience would be very different to what I would do for a CIO or a CTO.
Yeah, completely. And I think if you're running a packaging exhibition or whatever, you still need to get those buyers into the hall. And if they're not there, then there needs to be other mechanisms to do so to actually reach them.
Yeah, and I'd say for me as well, that's probably the bit that I haven't really seen any tech solutions really do yet, is that whole kind of, I think where trade shows, in-person trade shows are really good at is, as people walk around, you can grab them and sell to them. I think virtual currently on most of the products out there, and hopefully someone will grab me later if they've got a better product, but most of them don't really engage with or allow you to connect with people you don't really know in a meaningful way. I know some of the AI products out there, say they do, and it doesn't quite have that same serendipity or feeling that you get walking around a show and walking over to immersive AV and saying, right, what's this? This is B-Matrix, I haven't seen anything like this before. How does that work? And getting matched with someone on an online app, I don't think really does that. I think for existing customers, it's like with the Zoom calls, it's great. You can speak to your existing customers, but do you think that's going to change?
I'll just go back to your other point before I get onto that. So that connections piece that is the challenge, isn't it? That recommendations technology that people are looking at and making those connections, I think, is where the battle will be lost and won. And the people that get really, really good at that, I know that people are developing and it is getting better all the time, but I still don't think it is matched to the live in-person experience of connections. At Clarion, actually, we're taking almost the position of positioning ourselves as a connections business with the acquisition of Quartz last year and some of the other stuff that will be rolling out in 2022, which is exciting. But that curated connection or that moment of serendipity that you get is not being delivered in the virtual world as well as it could be at this moment in time.
In the hybrid world is what your live is for. So I think that's the whole point. It's basically using the technology there for what it's best at, which is really the data tracking, and to really sort of be able to chuck those potential buyers down the funnel for the exhibitors and also for you as organisers to understand it. But the serendipity side of it, unless we're going to start doing sort of networking rooms, which are sort of a bit more like gaming environments, I think we're going to struggle to do that in the virtual environment. But I think ultimately...
You're saying use the data to create the moment of serendipity in the live event?
I think so. I think the live event has that. That's what the live event element is all about. I think going to a virtual event, it's actually looking at the strengths of what can be done in virtual and what can be done in live. And don't expect everything that's in live to be done in virtual.
And I think it's been very interesting to watch Event Tech Live this week, actually, who've tried something very similar to that, and I think that might be what hybrid looks like. I went to an event Glisser did, about a month ago, and it was quite well set up where you had an event, small event in London, small event in New York, and 1,000 or so people online, and that was watching the interaction between the audience was very interesting. But I think seeing what Adam's done and the team here, which been a really well run event, and seeing that the beginning of the week is about almost setting up some of those leads, getting some conversations and some data going, which is after all in live what we always want. We want people to arrange meetings beforehand, and then actually coming and catching up with the guys on the stands.
I think that timing piece is really interesting, actually, because I think that is it a pre-connect, or do you want to have longevity of the activation or the show in the market for longer? What is a realistic amount of time that you could expect to hold people's attention after the show? Is it a community in the true sense of the word, or is it an elongated experience of your show that then there's a virtual connection or a watch party, or you can watch all the sessions that you missed afterwards?
Yeah.
And I think it might be market by market. You're going to see different, some communities or shows and their audiences are very conversational and very collaborative in their makeup because of the topic they do. The sector I work in, everyone's very collaborative. Even people who are competitive seem very collaborative. But I know some sectors are, you'll get in and transact on the product you want and kind of get out.
Yeah, but I think the big difference is when you actually do go to a proper hybrid model where you've got year-round engagement, you're actually, as a platform or organizer, you're putting the right suppliers in front of the right buyers, and then you're going to allow that relationship to grow because if you're doing it right, you should be pushing the content in or getting the exhibitors and sponsors to be providing new content to keep the whole story fresh on the platform. And then as a result, over time, that relationship will be nurtured and grown. Whereas within the live environment, it's a live event, we all know that you go to your exhibit at the end of day 3 or whatever and say, how have you done? And they're going to look very hard at the leads they've got. And they're not really thinking, this guy might sort of do something in a year's time. They want to know here and now what results they've got. So I think this actually allows the event brand to allow its exhibitors to grow their relationships over a longer period of time.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that what that depends upon, and this is something that I'm throwing around at the moment, is you just have to know who it's for. Sort of that virtual, that community, that platform, whatever you want to call it, and it doesn't have to be for all of the visitors and attendees. In my view, I think that actually I might take a view that I just want a subset of my audience to be able to access the the virtual hybrid element afterwards, especially if you're talking about peer-to-peer connections, because we all know that, you know, if you're turning up to an event and you're a VIP at that event, you're going to get 25, you know, sort of connections a day or requests a day or messages, and you're just not going to go and use the platform after that. But if you actually curate the community or curate who's in there, I think that that is something that we need to look at.
That's where they pay you the big bucks. No, I completely agree. I think it's really a case of trying to ensure that we're delivering success, delivering results, and actually this is opening up a whole new world for us as event organisers, technology suppliers, that really just pushes the event brand out there and keeps it alive.
Couldn't agree more.
I've got a couple of questions.
I was going to say, have we got any questions from
Yes.
from the virtual world out
There
there?
were a couple on Glisser, but they seem to have dropped off. So, but I was watching them as they were coming in. So, what I find really interesting is we're talking a lot about virtual events and the benefit for customers right there, right then. But actually, have you found benefits in actually promoting your live event? Have you seen virtual used as a marketing tool to promote the live event and to build that live community back up? Have you seen that in working?
Well, I mean, I'll do a quick one, and then if you want to go on to you, James. I mean, at the moment, I'm launching an event next year, and we're using virtual to launch that event. You know, we're targeting different segments or audience clusters. We're putting together webinars. You know, I mean, some webinars in different sectors are getting, 20, 30, 50 people. We're getting 150 people coming to webinars, which is like a huge, huge number. But we're working really, really hard on just that one and almost running it like a small event, making sure the sponsors who are expecting 50 people on the webinar get 150 leads, and suddenly they're very happy, and we use that to sell them into a live event. Because if you don't have a brand and you don't exist in the marketplace, and you may have run events for, since 96 or whenever it was, to get those new events into the market is quite difficult. And I think, without virtual, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And I think we've still done those kind of tried and trusted, go and get your 15 or 20 media partners and association brands, try and get some founding partners. But to build traction, digital's actually helping us get there, and amplify it much, much faster than I think we would have done if we hadn't done it that way.
And a sort of proof of concept in a way.
That's exactly what it is. And each one is a mini proof of concept for a different audience segment. And it's actually quite interesting because it's our initial thought of what the event was going to be and who the audience was going to be it's changed dramatically. And I think you can use it to test, A/B test what you think the audience response is going to be, and it suddenly opens up a whole new angles that you hadn't really, thought about. I mean, I thought we were running an event aimed at the founder community to start with, and actually you see that, we wanted the investment community to come to that founder community, but actually the investment community have got a whole load of other people that they're looking to speak to as well, who we didn't even know about. And it's only when you really start doing that and then testing it, you realise there's an unmet need in the marketplace for events in that space as well.
Is that something you found as well, Jane?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think this is new, though. I think the growing up in media and publishing and also running events at UBM, that's almost like going back to the times of working with our editorial teams and seeing, hey, look, if I write a news story on this, or if I do this, and how much engagement does it get, and does that give me an idea of whether it's going to be successful or whether you need to change the product. All of that insight you can get from that. It's always full circle, hasn't it? It's like, oh, right, we want to disconnect. We want to.
Maybe we should launch a magazine.
Yeah, let's launch a magazine. It's gone full circle again. But that whole thing of the lessons that you used to be able to, or the exploration that you used to be able to do with a media or digital product, is just coming back full circle. I think that actually anyone that did work in publishing before events has probably found that pivot to digital to be. It's hard. We knew it was going to be hard because I ran virtual events in 2012 or 13 that were really, really challenging on much worse tech. So it was never going to be easy, but you knew what to expect. You knew that it was going to be, it wasn't going to be about certain, it was going to be more about content than it was going to be about networking, even though that had improved. So.
But I think the immediacy, though, is the bit that digital gives you, is in that we can do a webinar in 2 weeks' time, and I can go and research an audience now over these 2 weeks, launch it, and to go and do that on a magazine and to build the circulation and get your ABC and.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean magazine. I was taking the mick about that. Obviously, we were doing webinars and virtual events back then too. But I agree. I think that it's the scale, it's how much we've scaled it and how much more intelligent they are, how much like the data analytics that we get from it. Has it, to answer your question, are we using it as part of a marketing campaign? Yeah, I think that everything's integrated as part of your portfolio mix. So if you're doing webinars alongside your live events or whatever, they need to be interlinked. And speaking to Tamar and the guys over at Gleanin, I think that they're doing some great work on affiliate marketing as well now. So the fact that you can get someone to come to your virtual event, promote it to their network, and then we just did a debrief meeting on DTX yesterday. Really interesting to sort of see how many people that were coming to some of the virtual events that we were doing and how many people registered and turned up. And that's completely new data sets as well. I think that actually the ability to build your data set and increase your engagement with your data rather than picking it up and 3 months before the show then dropping it again for the next 12 months. We know that's a classic.
And that's interesting about the data sets. I think on the last webinar we did with 160 people, I mean, they all came from absolutely everywhere. There wasn't like we had an email list and that's where it came from. I mean, they were from every single channel that you could possibly think of. So, I mean, constructing a marketing campaign now, you look at it and you think the complexity to deliver that campaign out, to get yourself, 3, 4, 10,000 people. Yeah,
the whole send a DM out or put a front page ad on something and can we get everyone to turn up, is a little bit more complicated these days.
So James, from an organiser's perspective, how much has the virtual element got to pay for itself, and how much is it seen as being a potential marketing channel to feed the overall event brand?
Well, it more than pays for itself. It's definitely been financially successful, not to the same degree as we have done.
But moving forward, is it being seen very much as a profit centre or something that you're going to...
Absolutely. I think that a company like Clarion with lots of different sectors, each team or division will have its own approach, and sometimes it will be more like a community marketplace, or it will be about content. I think that you were doing different things in Lit, for example, Duncan, that I was doing more traditional virtual events. Duncan was doing like a Netflix-style box set. So however you wrap it up, you might have a different version of getting there. I think the big thing for us is how we can do virtual connections. So, sort of very, very successful business with Quartz. They were basically able to turn, sort of their live events business almost 100% into a virtual business with the connections that they were doing. Really, really smart. And we'll be extending that with some slightly different versions of like virtual roundtables and boardroom style things into next year, and I think that it's just horses for courses. What style of virtual event will work for your audience?
But I think that even on those ones, there's still a really big part of like human interaction and human involvement. It's not, it's not the tech working out who you should be meeting. It's, they are properly curated by humans working out who the audience is. Do we have any more questions? I think we've got about 10 minutes to go.
We don't have any questions, but I've got questions.
Go on, ask away.
I'm that person,
you've got
sorry.
10 minutes.
Community. What makes a good community, and in your eyes, and let's talk about the size of community, right? Because you mentioned that you had a webinar that was really successful with 160 people. In traditional event organisers, we've all gone bigger, better, largest. I've got so many questions around this, but how have we done ourselves an injustice? And in terms of community, how big is a successful community? Like, what size are we talking about for you guys to make it profitable as Clarion? What's a win for you guys? Do you measure it in that way?
I don't know if that's the right KPI. I think it's like with anything. It's about the levels of engagement, because if you build a really big community that's dead, or we've all done that whole thing of let's set up a LinkedIn group and see how that works, and then it's just basically all of your vendors talking to one another, and that's why I think actually, for me,
I've been to shows like that.
You've organised some. I think for me, I would prefer to have to start with a smaller community, maybe even 500 or 800. Who are almost qualified buyers. So I think that what underpins a successful community is a successful data strategy. If you don't have your data that's tagged, and if you don't have the right profile questions about people, it's the same thing as matching technology is never going to work. If you put rubbish data into a situation, then you're going to get rubbish out. Same thing with the community. I don't think if it's not curated and it's just left to somehow magically appear, it's
Yeah,
not going to work.
And I think different communities, so even if I look at the event we're launching next year, you know, the financial advisor community they're really after data points. They want to know, they want to come to a community which is a log of information where they can speak to vendors or suppliers to ask specific questions. If I look at startups and founders, which is another sector in that event, those founders actually want to talk to other founders to find out how they build their pitch deck so they can go and invite some investors, and those investors want to talk to the other investors about how well they're doing. So the interactions there of community, you know, that's why it's such a hard KPI to kind of measure. You know, I think you know, your question was, is size important? And I think you're saying, you know, it's more about the quality of it.
It is, but it's probably the second KPI, not the first.
Yeah, I just think, you know, events might, you know, they're going to take a year or 2 or 5 to, you know, get back to scale again, I think. And I think digital's got a really good opportunity to kind of weave together some of those interactions so that when you turn up at the live event for 2 hours or 3 hours, all the people that you wanted to see to make that time the best 3 hours there are going to, you know, they're all going to be there at the same time. You're not going to, you know, you're not going to WhatsApp each other and go, oh, I'm just leaving. You know, I just think you're going to make sure those moments are really, really valuable. And I think you'll also then start to go, well, actually, I'm in that city going to that event, right, I'm going to go and see 5 clients who are there, and you'll match that up. And I think you know, often in recessions, you've had this kind of flock to quality on trade shows, where, you know, there were 10 shows in the market contracts, there were 3 or 4 left, and the 3 or 4 often get bigger because they're really good. And I think you might see that now with kind of the digital products around these big events, is that the events themselves become better lead gen, actually better, even though there are fewer people.
Yeah, I think one of the key things is the community is only successful as the data strategy say. I mean, literally, what we need to do is actually identify each individual to get as many data points as possible, so then we can provide them something in return. We have to provide value for the community, otherwise the community is not going to stay around for long.
And I think that's sometimes where people go wrong as well. The community's trying to do too many things. If there's just a very clear purpose about what it's trying to do, you know, sort of the same reasons why do people go to shows. Are you going to the show for procurement reasons, go around an exhibition, or are you going there to learn, or are you going there to network? Typically, they're going to be the 3 things. As an event organizer, if you're not a publishing brand, to try and move into the learning space, for me, for example, there's 146 enterprise IT websites, some of them with 11 million users. I'm not going to be able to create a content-based community. That's not going to work. But could I do something that's more curated around connections? Sure. Could I do a procurement piece? No, because there's a lot of you know, sort of millions of pounds worth of investment made by competitors who've already got directories of all of the best software products you can get. So you just have to look at the competitive environment and think, well, what is the community and what do they need, and can I do something which is a very clear value proposition?
Fab, we've got some more questions and about 5 minutes. So, will virtual be a component of the event planner's arsenal forever, even if it's partial virtual, partial live?
No, obviously.
Will virtual be a component of the
yes,
arsenal forever?
yeah,
Yes, it will.
yeah. Obviously, I was joking. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I think the analogy I've always used since kind of we went into that pivot to digital back in sort of March 2020 was that, you know, I see the product that we'll have coming out of this being like football or soccer. You know, if you look at what happened when Sky came into, you know, Sky in '91 when they went into football, was you had a very good, solid in-person product that had 20,000 people going to each of these games. You syndicate it, sell it globally, get it all going online. It's a on-demand highlights package called Match of the Day, and it's, you know, it really is everywhere. And now you've got 40, 60, 70,000 gates in the Premier League. The product's sold globally, and I think we can do that with events. I think you can have, you know, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 turning up in person, maybe 20, 50, 100,000 watching it online and watching it for longer and watching the on-demand bit. And
actually, very interestingly, the people making money, it brings more revenue in for the football clubs because of Sky and, you know...
Well, it totally does. And if you look at every ground, that 20,000 to 40,000 increase in their gates is not just people spending £40 on a seat. Actually, there are a load more people spending £40 on a seat, but they've actually managed to sell, which in our world is like premium content, premium conference products, additional networking, paid for matchmaking. You know, that whole layered business of hospitality or whatever it is, you know, getting a car to pick you up and take you to the event, having your whole diary planned for you, all things like that I think are just going to grow as a result of the increased, you know, I mean, people I mean, you run an event for 10 years and you know, you meet people who've never heard of it. I mean, it still amazes me now on some of the shows I've worked on in sectors where people just don't know.
I like the broadcasting analogy, and I think that actually there's a lot to be learned from the way that we design and the way that the production values, the commercial model. I think that is definitely something that I think like a match of the day style to extend the analogy where you see the best bits of content.
Can I present it?
No, you're not Gary Lineker. I think the broadcasting model is something that we should look at more than, I think it's just too easy to knit together a load of webinars. I think it needs to be more curated than that. I think that there's been some really good examples and some really shocking examples of virtual events.
Yeah, that leads into the question actually, what are some of the best interactivity examples you've seen in a virtual hybrid events to make sure the audience stays engaged?
I think that again, they're probably slightly smaller, more sort of leadership type things, but the experiences that people are doing, you know, sort of to actually make sure that people are actually engaged with the virtual event. I think that I hear a lot of our customers or our attendees saying, hey, look, yeah, I've got this virtual event on, but it's actually in the background and I'm just doing my work and the virtual event's in the background. I'm not really paying attention. Whereas if you have something that is, hey, Duncan, we're doing a wine tasting, or we've got this, you know, sort of activity that you're doing, that is better.
This week you've got COP. I mean, the best example at the moment is COP. You know, the BBC are there covering it every single angle. They've got the kids channels covering it. They've got the you know, it's on the news. It's on 24. They're running highlights packages. They're standing there overlooking it. They're in the blue room. They're in the green room. They've done pre-recorded CEO interviews with all the guys. I mean, that's the product we need to be delivering.
Yeah. Or when you get like the, you know, sort of the government elections and stuff, and they do all and they cover it live from in there, and then they take out and they do the analysis. I mean, the Americans are brilliant at it on CNN and stuff, aren't they? That's really good.
And I saw a session yesterday which was delivered by Jack Lineker, and he runs a TV. They're from TV. They do Top Gear and Strictly Come Dancing, and they were like even techniques of showing happy people in the audience. So and adding depth to the stage. You know, the things that they do in broadcasting that you wouldn't know about because you're just enjoying the audience. If you look at Glastonbury, half of the footage is of the audience, isn't it? You know, and it's things like that, and then it keeps you engaged, and you know.
And I think one of the questions here is about do we need to upskill our staff?
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the challenges with the pandemic is, you know, most companies let 60-70% of their staff go, and we've lost a lot of people from this industry. But actually, you know, if hybrid is the future, there's a lot of people who've worked in TV production, a lot out there who've done everything from, you know, working a camera to kind of running production teams, to looking at how they schedule the interviews beforehand, all that sort of stuff. You know, so it's not like we're having to go somewhere new to get some of these people. You know, I think we can do that. But our product needs to, you know, and hopefully digital helps us do that. Our product needs to get a bit better.
Yeah. We hit time, so actually, if any last thoughts? Nick, you got any last thoughts at all that you'd like to share?
I'll leave the time for Duncan.
He's always got something to say.
That's a wrap.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you to all.